and welcome to Archive Dive. I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Each month, we dip into files on historic events, people, and places in Superior and Douglas County with local historians. Today, we'll explore a Superior librarian's 2-year campaign to build a Frank Lloyd Wright home in Superior. Had it succeeded, the design that Wright dubbed Below Zero would have been nestled in Superior's Central Park neighborhood, near Lenroot's funeral home, across from Gouge Park. The connection between the world-famous architect and librarian Edith Carlson has captured the imagination of writers on 2 continents. Helping us dive into the story today is local historian Teddy Meronek. Hi, Teddy.
Hi, Maria.
Thanks for coming in again.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, as I understand it, you are one of the authors of a paper on Edith, correct?
I am.
How did you learn about her?
You know, sometimes I look at life like, if I hadn't been there that day, would I have missed this opportunity? I got an email from Kathy Loxo, who was director of the Douglas County Historical Society at one time, and she asked me if I had ever heard of a librarian named Edith Carlson, because apparently a relative or family member of Edith's had been at the Historical Society that day and offered Kathy and the Society a collection of Edith's papers. Well, I believe it was beyond, the amount of money that could have been afforded by the Society, so Kathy, of course, had to decline. But she asked me if I had ever heard of Edith Carlson, and I had to admit that I hadn't. So the first thing I did was to go to our newspaper index and look up her name and see if there was anything about her in this Frank Lloyd Wright house. And the only thing I found was her obituary.
Oh.
And after that, I always kept her obituary on my desk because it was a story that fascinated me. And I thought it'll always remind me to look. When I'm looking for something else, it'll always remind me to look for Edith Carlson. Okay. So that's how it started.
How long was that obituary on your desk before you started digging in again?
Well, I think through the years, I would ask people. I would say, have you ever heard of a Frank Lloyd Wright house? Like it's something we wouldn't know about. I don't know what I was thinking. Certainly if there was a Frank Lloyd Wright house in Superior, somebody would know about it. And I heard various stories. I heard that where Edith eventually built her own house after the Wright episode, that it had originally been underneath the current house were the bones of the Wright house.
Really?
That it had been started and never completed and then turned into something else. And I thought that was probably not something that happened. And I would hear stories on and off again about Wright doing this or Wright doing that in Superior. The only thing I was ever able to track down is that there was a house in Superior that had been remodeled by someone who had been an apprentice of Wright's. Never found the name of who it was, but I think that story has a ring of truth to it. The Wright house had no truth to it. But
okay, just rumors floating
just
around.
Just rumors.
But then someone reached out to you with some proof.
They did. Her name is Philippa Lewis, and she's from Somerset, England. And one day I had an email forwarded to me by the director of the library, Sue Heskin, and it was from Philippa, and she was asking about a librarian named Edith Carlson, and she wanted to know if Sue knew about her. And Sue said, yes, she did. And she could hook her up with the person who did know a little bit more about Edith, although not much more. And apparently the person that Philippa was writing a story about Edith for had purchased this collection of Edith's from an auction house in New York City.
Okay.
And had shown it to Philippa and said, see what you can do with this. So as she was looking through it, she found out that the librarian was from Superior, Wisconsin, and really what better place to look for information about a city than to contact the local library.
Exactly.
So she did, and that started our friendship, and we've been corresponding for the last 4 years.
Excellent. So what were you able to find out from those letters and from other research that you did?
Well, what happened was, I think when she reached out to me, I had permission to devote significant time to this research about Edith, where before it was just sort of something I would do if I was looking through something else. I would look for something about Edith. But what I did is I went to the depths of the library that I never thought I would go to, looking for something about this woman because I didn't know anything about her. I searched library scrapbooks. The library has scrapbooks dating back to the 1890s. So I looked through the years that Edith had been a librarian. Didn't find much. look through personnel records. There was a little bit. It seemed to me the library, what they held on to mostly were statistics about how many books were checked out, which in the long run doesn't help you when you're searching for someone. I was very disappointed because I did not find a lot of things about her in the library's collection, and only 2 photos, which really made me sad. And I think, well, then when I got to know her, when I finally tracked down what exactly she did at the library by going through annual reports and things, I found out that she was first hired as a general assistant, but then she became the stations librarian, which made me feel good because that's what I was hired to do when I first went to work for the Superior Public Library. So when you're a stations librarian, that meant you never spent any time at the main library.
You were going out
we
to
were
the
going
station
from
libraries?
places. And in her day, there were many, many, many station librarians station libraries because the schools didn't have their own libraries.
Right.
So the public library made sure that there was library access to neighborhoods within town that otherwise wouldn't have access. Where when I started at the library, we only had 2 stations. One was in South Superior and one was in Billings Park. And then we had a branch at the East End Library. So I felt sort of simpatico with her. You know, we
felt
had
a kindred spirit.
Right. This is why you see no pictures of us in the collection of staff photos, because we were never there.
You were too busy running from station to
Right.
station.
We were at different places outside. When they were having all the staff parties, we were working in South Superior. But that was part of it. And
Didn't you tell me she didn't have a car, though?
she didn't have a car. I don't know how many years it was before she had a car. When she first started the job, she would go from station to station on the bus.
Okay.
And I can't imagine what kind of time that took out of her day just to go from place to place. What I also noticed about her was that as the years went by, although they were never signed are attributed in the annual reports, there were sections that were written by different departments in the library. And I somehow knew that Edith had written the station's reports. And she, as the years went by, she became much more, I don't know if adamant's the right word, or if she cared even more about the services that were being provided. And she was always petitioning for more books, more shelves, and more space for the people she served.
So she was a real advocate for literacy
She certainly
and
was.
library access.
And after I discovered her relationship with Wright, which, really brought forth her determination.
Yes. So Edith was looking to have Frank Lloyd Wright build her a house. How much did she want the house to cost?
$5,500.
Okay, she had an upper limit
Yes, although later on in some of the correspondence, you will see her say, I don't want it to go over $6,000, knowing that, Frank Lloyd Wright never really stuck to a budget, so she had a little gap there. She was hopeful, yes.
Right. So this was really not your big grand Frank Lloyd Wright. This was something down to earth, something that she wanted to live in.
Right. This was his new idea, the Usonian house, that it would be quickly built, and very economical in Frank Lloyd Wright world. I don't know in the real world how it ever turned out, but it was something that she could live with, a price tag that she could live with and pay for, which was her main concern because of her small salary at the Superior Public Library.
Okay, so she was working as a stations librarian when she initially approached Wright about building a house?
Yes, and she was making about, I can't remember what the exact salary was, but she had been a teacher before.
Okay.
She became a librarian, and her last salary, which was listed on her application to work at the Superior Public Library, she had made $1,900 a year. When she started at the library, they paid her $100 a month. So she took a significant cut in pay. And then I think she was approached, or when she got the promotion to station librarian, she probably made an extra $20 more a month, which was significant in those days. So that's what she was a station librarian when she approached Wright. And she had a history with him, although he didn't know it, but she did. When she was in school getting her bachelor's degree in Madison, she had a 2-year degree from the normal school in Superior, and then taught for several years and decided to go back to school when she had been teaching in Racine and decided to go back to school at the University of Wisconsin, where she was studying botany. And her botany teacher must have known Wright and arranged for a tour of his class could take of Taliesin, Wright's home. And he also gave them the opportunity to meet Wright. So I think that's where she got her first idea.
So she
about
met
Frank
him
Lloyd
and
Wright.
she knew him, and
that could be.
And I understand from Philippa's story that she also saw a magazine article about a regular home that he had built in Madison.
Yes, and that was quite a challenge for me, because Philippa wanted to know which magazines the library subscribed to in 1938.
Oh no!
Unfortunately, I don't know why they say circulation statistics, where it would be much more interesting. Of course, I guess you don't know that at the time. Much more interesting for people in the future to know what were people reading. Save book lists, save magazine lists. But I found it, and the reason I found it is because there are board meeting minutes back to the beginning of the library.
Wow.
And the board was the one who okayed and paid the bills. So they needed a list of magazines
That they were buying.
And when I discovered that, I was like, wow, this is so exciting. And although I never did trace down whether the library subscribed to the Architectural Forum, which was the issue that Edith referred to, was the entire issue was about Frank Lloyd Wright.
Okay.
And it featured a house that he had designed for Herbert Jacobs in Madison, which was, I think, one of his first Usonian homes. The smaller homes, and it had cost $5,500 to build.
And she saw that and she said, hey, I can afford that.
Right, she did. She must have been a very frugal woman, because she not only, she had already purchased some lots that were near her parents' house, but then she realized that if she wanted to get a loan, she wouldn't be able to get one for those lots because it was in an unlendable neighborhood, which meant that it wasn't near a bus line, for one thing. And so that's when she purchased the lots across from Gouge Park, because it was, it was on 4th Street and the buses ran down 5th Street. So it was only a few steps away to the buses. So
okay. So that was strategic. So
that was very strategic for her,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So she reached out to him, and as I understand it, she had a lot of back and forth with his assistants, and only one time did he ever actually write her.
Right. And she reached out at first and wanted to find out more information about, the possibility of building this small house in Superior, because she had read about the Herbert Jacobs house, and she wanted to find some details. Well, one of Mr. Wright's assistants, I'm sure the ever and long-suffering Mr. Maslink, wrote back to her and said, yes, this is how it works. He gets, so much of a percentage of the final product, and we need a topographic map of your property, blah, blah, blah. But if you'd send those to us. And she responds to him with, I haven't really decided yet if I want Frank Lloyd Wright to design my house.
Cheeky.
She was very cheeky with that. And so they went back and forth, and she finally made the decision.
Okay.
And then she had to pay him up front for a percentage of his design, and it went from there.
Okay. Apparently there was a lot of back and forth because he was designing a home for maybe southern Wisconsin and not northern Wisconsin.
Right. And in fact, that gave him the idea for the name, because she asked him initially, do you think you can possibly design a home in a city where the frost permeates the ground to 6 feet and temperatures sometimes hit 40 below zero? And it's not at all like, more snow falls here than ever falls in Madison. And she knew about Madison because she'd gone to school there. And of course, he focused in on that below zero and gave the house that he was going to design for her the name Below Zero, which she didn't really like.
No, she wanted it to be named High Spruces.
High Spruces, because of her love for the trees that were on the property, and that she, in fact, got into quite a back and forth with him about whether or not those trees could be touched, because she did not want them cut down. She did not want them trimmed, and he was to build a house around them. But he called it Below Zero, and she called it My High Spruces.
Okay, so there was some back and forth there. Apparently, both of them had different ideas about things.
Right.
And she did have a lot of demands, changes, things that she saw in her house that she envisioned she needed. And was that difficult, do you think, back and forth between them?
I think I've read a lot about Frank Lloyd Wright, and it seems to me that a lot of people who had him design buildings and houses for them were in awe of him.
He is pretty famous.
He's very famous, and he he really does know his stuff, you know?
Yes.
And I think they were a little taken aback by his presence, and Edith wasn't. I don't know why, she had been a debater in high school.
Okay.
And one of the debates that she took part in was the girls in this Nelson Dewey High School class against the boys. And the topic was, are girls brighter than boys? The girls won. And the boys contested the decision.
Oh, my.
But they won. So I don't think she was a shrinking violet at all.
No.
And she had no problem standing toe-to-toe with him and saying, this is what I need. This is my house.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I need. And most people would just say, well, it's Frank Lloyd Wright.
Whatever you want.
Yes. And she was adamant about things like, was there enough storage? She had 2 traveling trunks and 3 suitcases. She needed a place for them. She was wondering if there was room in the basement for a Bendix washing machine. She'd just seen one demonstrated, and she would like to have one down there because she did not appreciate taking wet clothes up and down the stairs. And she must have hung hers in the basement, I'm thinking. And then all of these things that, he was going to put in below floor heating. Mm-hmm. Did that work? She even wrote to Mr. and Mrs. Jacobs and asked them about their house. And she had a list of questions for them. Are you happy with this? Are you happy with that? Is the heating system the way you like it? And they had to admit that they had to put in a new furnace, I believe.
Because it wasn't enough
Yeah,
to
it
keep them
wasn't.
warm in the
Although
winter.
I've heard other stories where that Wright's heating systems worked for years and years and years. So I don't know. But she was not going to be kowtowed by him.
She wrote back and said, we need to have south-facing windows.
Right.
If you don't have south-facing windows in Superior, there's no point in building.
There's no point in having windows, yes.
She was very,
Yeah.
very assertive.
And she said to him, although she did this always through his secretary, she said, I don't think this is working, having us write back and forth. We need to meet in person. And she would invite him up to Superior. Frank Lloyd Wright in Superior, I like to think about that. But he was always going somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wright is at Taliesin West in Arizona. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wright is accepting an honor in England, so he's not available, or he's on this trip. And she said, well, if he came to Superior, she would make sure that he could stay at the Androy Hotel. Oh. He should be happy there. Apparently there was something. She was living with her parents when she moved back to Superior. And she mentioned this in her letters to Wright's secretary, that they quarreled quite a bit and it was quite a strain on her mother. And so Edith had to live with that. And she mentioned it to Wright again. She said, I can't ask you to stay at my mother's house because if I could, I wouldn't be building a house. Oh. So I don't know what was going on there. She had hopes that her mother would come and live with her.
Right. She wanted a veranda or for her mom to, like an upstairs porch for her to lay out and get sun.
Yeah, because she had arthritis, and Edith told him, the sun is good for arthritis. But he never came to Superior, but she did go down there and meet with him. And the letter that she sent back to his secretary was, how much do I owe you for, transportation and meals and all of this? And the response was, well, you were our guest. You don't. But
Okay.
Edith, yeah.
But meeting with him still didn't make a Wright House happen.
No. And there were letters back and forth about the actual plans. And all she had in the beginning were the drawings, which was, a drawing of the exterior of the house and then a floor plan of the interior. Mm-hmm. They weren't the actual building plans. And she kept saying to them, how can I make a decision if I can't see the plans? Mm-hmm. And there was talk of, I think it was Edgar Toffel was working for Wright at the time, and he would often be sent to supervise a build. Mm-hmm. And he was sent to Three Rivers, Wisconsin. And he said, well, when I'm there, I can take some time out and I can come to Superior and show you the plans. And I thought, well, Three Rivers is kind of a hike from Superior.
A little ways.
But then but she said to him, well, why don't you send them to me first? Mm-hmm. I will look at them and then we can discuss it. I'll know what I'm talking about. And it seems to me that that's kind of where it all broke down. And Toffel never came to Superior. Okay. But I think they did send her plans, although I don't think they're included with the collection that's held in England. And I think there were a number of reasons. And I have to thank Edith also for giving me the opportunity to dive more deeply into the history of the Superior Public Library. Because of her, I really looked at the women who worked there when she did in the 1930s, 1940s, and what was happening to them and what was happening in Superior. And you think by the end of the 1930s, that's when people start saying, well, we're getting out of the Depression. Well, we weren't getting out of the Depression in Superior. And the librarians took, from a 3 to 15% cut in pay, each of them. And then they also had to take 4 weeks off during the year without pay. And this happened in 1940. So her last real correspondence with Wright is at that time. And she even mentions in a letter that at one time it had been 4.5 months since they'd gotten one paycheck in 4.5 months.
Oh, no.
And in 1940, I ran across this article a few weeks ago about how they had to borrow money. The city finally had to borrow money from the Board of Education to pay city employees because they had no money.
Okay. So suddenly Edith is looking at a very slim paycheck, and isn't that when she writes back to him and says, I can't do this anymore?
I can't pay my taxes because of the pay cuts. And she took a substantial pay cut. I think her pay went down like $200. That doesn't seem like a lot to us, but in a year, that was a lot for her. And she was obviously very savvy about finances because she had saved enough money to buy all this property. And, she knew that she would have been able to if they had done it in a timely manner. Paid for the house, but things got dragged out too long.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
It started in
Right.
1938,
Yeah.
right? And
I'm sure Wright was looking at it as, well, this is an easy job. And the other thing is, what other expense that came with it? You couldn't hire a local man as a project manager for this. It had to be one of Wright's apprentices or employees that would be sent to the site and would stay in Superior until the house was finished. And Edith would be responsible not only for his lodgings, but also for meals.
oh, that's a price.
And it was like $25 a week was the pay that you had to give him, this person. At that time, when they were talking about this, Edith made like maybe $38 a week. So I would think that would be a substantial sacrifice because I'm sure you're not going to throw up a Wright house in about 4 weeks or anything,
No, it's going to take a while.
Right. So he kept his fingers in the pie until it was finished.
Okay. So eventually in 1940, she said, I can't build
do
the
it.
house. The house did eventually get built.
It did. It got built. There was talk one time of building it in Racine, but those plans fell through. It finally got built years later in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I think it recently sold in the last few years for over $1 million.
Wow. Okay. So that's the house that would have been
That
in
would have been
Superior,
the exact house that would have been in Superior.
but
And
it moved to Michigan.
And I think Philippa found in her records, because she's a lot of notes that Edith wrote and things, and that Edith wrote about it. And one of the things Edgar Toffel wrote to Edith about was that, this is Mr. Wright's 204th house. And I think she scribbled in a note, well, it may be his 204th house, but it's my first. And she was taking it that seriously. And this would probably be the only house she would ever build in her lifetime. Right. And then, I think they probably both got weary of the whole process, 2
years is a long time.
Yeah. And she bemoaned the fact that it just wasn't her loss. She also thought of it as Superior's loss, which is very true.
Yes, very true.
Would be nice to have Frank Lloyd Wright house across from Gouge Park
in
in Superior.
Station.
Yeah.
Okay. She did eventually build a house, though.
She did, not far from her parents.
Okay.
Still standing. That's the one that, people had said that it had originally been a Wright house and she just built that exterior. But no. They were in 2 different locations. So.
Okay.
But I think the thing that kind of upsets me about Edith is that I actually knew people, and when I started at the library, worked with people who had worked with her. Of course, when you're young, you never think of these things. And I thought I would have just loved to have talked to one person who knew her, just one. But I didn't know her then either.
No.
to me, it's just turned out to be such a wonderful experience. One of the reasons is because I got to know Philippa Lewis, who wrote about Edith, and I thought that's been a wonderful experience to chat with somebody in England, and especially during the time of the pandemic too, where we exchanged back and forth. So
excellent.
Edith has kept on giving.
She has. She didn't give us a right house, but she has given us some wonderful stories.
Yeah, she has. Yeah, it makes me so appreciate what those women went through, who did the same job I did at the Superior Public Library in different times and held the place together. They did. I mean, there would have been so easy just to close the library down, but they stayed there through thick and thin. So I admire their courage.
I do too. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Teddy.
You're welcome, Maria.
Thanks for listening to Archive Dive. New episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, email me at mlockwood@superiortelegram.com.
The Superior Telegram is proud to be part of the Trust Project. Learn more at thetrustproject.org.